Hello and welcome to the Outcast. I'm your host HC and with me is.
Wolf.
And today, one of the weirdest shows that just kind of came out of nowhere and it's very random in terms of what it's based on, but also I felt like it could make a good episode after I watched it. Let's see the entire name for it because goddamn is it a long name. We're talking about Captain Laserhawk. Um, Captain Laserhawk, sorry.
A
A
Blood Dragon
blade.
remix.
Yes. So now is the point where I ask you, Wolf, what do you know about what this is supposed to be?
Well, Blood Dragon is basically Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. I know that. I played that. It was a fun little side thing for Far Cry 3. Very, silly and over the top. And it's like cyberpunk, dystopian humor stuff. But, still
Which is very
enjoyable.
common this time, which is very common these days.
But very enjoyable, very fun. Nothing wrong with it. Nice little side DLC. Otherwise, yeah, I knew nothing else
The
about
thing is,
this being
though,
a thing.
this is not just Far Cry. This is
True.
a lot of other Ubisoft or Ubisoft. I'm most likely going to alternate between how I say that company's name for the record because I heard it both ways.
I'm English,
But
so Ubisoft. But I've
you see,
done both.
yeah, like the thing is, I can alternate and I won't even notice. So either
Fair, fair.
way,
But yeah,
what I,
this is a
whichever,
this
whichever
is
works for you. It's kind of like a Ubisoft Smash show, like a
yes.
Smash Brothers of a few Ubisoft franchises, but at the same time, none of the franchises really act like themselves. It's
Yeah, they definitely don't. Like
like
there's it.
every connection between the original games and this is very maybe the Far Cry stuff is a bit more common because I haven't played Far Cry, so I can't tell you.
The games that we see that I know of is Far Cry 3, Assassin's Creed, Rayman, Beyond Good and Evil. I know of yeah, there's Watch Dogs as well, Splinter
Really,
Cell.
Splinter Cell. I noticed Watchdog no, but
Well, Watch Dogs 2.
and either way, I haven't really played that franchise, so I can't really tell you. But and then there's also Rainbow Six, which is I think
Yes.
the most non-it as you can be, but we'll get more to
And
it
then
when we
there's
talk
like
spoilers.
Far Cry 4 with Pagan Men.
It's a Ubisoft extravaganza that's
And
on
then
Netflix.
there is like a random AEW thing in here if you're into wrestling because that's, like a guest character with like Kenny Omega, and then there's Cody Rhodes as
Mhm.
well, who I didn't think this was a Ubisoft thing, but I did not know where it's from. But reading the wiki, that's like a guest character based on the likeness of him as a WWE superstar. So yeah, like because Cody Rhodes
So
is a
does that
WWE, which
and
is
top it all off
wild.
with a cyberpunk alternate future setting and a lot of social commentary, and you get this show. And for
There's
the record,
yeah, there's some social commentary, but
I will say before we get into everything and opinions, I will say that in terms of why I decided to check the show out, one word:
Rayman,
Rayman.
yeah, yeah,
To
yeah.
those who don't know me, if there's another character that means a lot to me besides Sonic the Hedgehog, it's Rayman. Thanks to Rayman, I am the gamer I am today, basically. I love Rayman. And if you think that I'm depressed over the fact that he hasn't been seen in 10 years, you'd be
Hmm.
correct.
I mean,
Okay.
how do you think the Beyond Good and Evil people feel, man?
Oh, I am a beyond good and evil people too. Trust me, I know. And
Two
believe
or
me,
three
there's
of
something
only good
ironic about
things.
and trust me, there's something ironic about how both of them were created by the same guy. Then again, the same guy is a douche, apparently. But besides the
I
point,
mean, apparently Ubisoft doesn't disagree with you, considering how some of those
the
characters got treated in this show.
we'll get to how they were treated.
Hmm.
But here's the thing.
I think
So I love. but basically, I really love Rayman, and for those who are probably already typing in the comments, yes, I did play that Mario Plus Rabbids DLC that they released earlier this year. But guess what? It's not a full game, so I'm gonna bitch. Then
Yeah.
again, then again, with this, and suddenly Rayman is in a new show on Netflix, no less. I'm like, I'm curious. Let's see what this is about. And so, for the record, did you hear anything about this before I told you? Hey, let's cover this.
Until you mentioned it, no. I think I heard like,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, I heard one friend say, "Huh, Captain Laserhawk's coming out," and I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "It's just a show," and it kind of just got buried after that. Like no one brought it back up. That friend never brought it back up again. They just didn't care that much, it seemed. And then you brought it up. It's like, hey, I want to cover Captain Laserhawk. I'm like, all right, that's the second time I've heard about this. What is it? And then you told me, and I'm like, huh, okay, that's wild and completely out
so
of nowhere.
before,
It feels like.
hmm so
Apparently,
anyway,
Ubisoft unveiled it back in October of 2019, but
well,
I never heard about that.
I never heard about it until it started again, until people started talking about it, and in my in my circle, I suddenly it's like, hey, Raymond is in this show, Raymond is in this show, Raymond is in this show, and I'm like, I'm listening, and here we are now. So
Well,
we've watched it. What are your
well,
for the record to
before we
those
get
who are
into
new? Yeah,
thoughts,
yeah, okay.
I think, should we talk a little bit about what is Ubisoft? We've talked about some of the games they made.
Um,
If you're not familiar, they are a game company. They make games. Like we said,
they
Rayman, Beyond Good and
Yeah,
Evil, Watch
they are a
Dogs,
French company.
Splinter
They are a
Cell.
French company. Yeah, they made Rayman. They made Assassin's Creed, Beyond Good and Evil, and Watch Dogs is a thing.
But
Rainbow
hey,
Six is under them, and
do you
also a franchise, and also Prince of Persia. Remember that one?
hmm
For the record, they didn't make the original Prince of Persia, but the
but
Sands of
they
Time
they
and
own
everything
it
else.
now though, essentially.
Yeah, and
But
I know that there's a new game coming out in January, but at the same time, Prince, what happened to that guy?
do you want a word that sums up or a feeling that sums up Ubisoft in one thing, one feeling, one word? Do you want that?
Yeah,
Because that
hit me.
answer is meh.
They have a track record that's both
Especially in
impressive and
recent years. I would say
yeah,
some of their past
yeah, like
games, really good.
mhm,
Looking at, again, Rayman, Beyond Good and Evil, Prince of Persia.
yeah.
Rainbow Six has had some good stuff in the past.
I think
Everyone
it's
has
what
that one Assassin's Creed game. That one Assassin's Creed game that's good. Everyone has one. I'm not going to name it because everyone's is different, but everyone has that one.
from what I know. Again, keep in mind that my experience with Assassin's Creed is I started playing two, and I liked what I played, but I just kind of other stuff came out and I kind of got distracted. But it seems like that, yeah, like two Brotherhood and Revelations, the ones with Ezio essentially, seem to be the most popular ones.
Either
I'm sure that
that
there are
or
other.
4, which is Black Flag, the piratey one, but I'm not sure if that was mostly the piratey thing or the Assassins thing that made it popular. Most people say the pirate thing,
I
and I don't
honestly, I
disagree.
can't tell you. I played a bit of Valhalla, and again, I played it a bit because I got it as a as a birthday gift. So I'm like, I might as well be polite. But other stuff came up. I didn't. I need to try and actually sit down and play those beginning to end. Already mentioned, big Rayman fan. Rayman 2 is my other favorite game of all time. Love this.
I say
Um,
I say meh though, right? Because
yeah,
to me,
because in recent
whenever,
years,
well, yes, recent years, but also generally speaking, beyond a few exceptions that have happened in recent years, and those few exceptions are very far in between, right?
mhm,
They're meh because they're meh. When you go into an Assassin's Creed game in recent years, when you go into basically anything Ubisoft does in recent years, you're not getting a
this is
bad
actually funny.
product.
I
But
will
what you're not
say,
getting something that's you might play through it and there's those one or two moments in their games that are like, okay, that was an interesting idea. That was something cool right there. But the entire everything surrounding it is very meh. It's not bad.
like,
You'll be
they're
entertained. You may not feel like you
it's one of
wasted
those
your time,
competently made.
but
They are competently made. Maybe you'll get enjoyment out of it, but but like once you beat it, you put it down and you may not come back to it.
And you probably don't remember much from it, if ever.
Which is so weird to think because like you ask like in 2002 2003 Ubisoft were on top of the gaming industry to some extent.
I don't know
Like
if they were on
eh,
top, but they were definitely like they were a
no,
player,
like
right? A
like
big
look at
player.
2003 alone. Okay, they had Rayman 3, which, say what you will about it, it's still a very good game. Then you had Beyond Good and Evil, which might have not
True.
sold well, but it's still very warmly regarded. Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, Splinter Cell, I think the second one was out by that point, and just other things like Ubisoft was a name. And for the record, when you looked at E3 for a while, for a good while, besides EA, they were the only third party company which had its own press conference alongside Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. They are a name. They were a name. And yeah, but like you said, in recent years, it's just kind of started to dwindle.
Pretty much.
And for the record, nothing against Assassin's Creed, but I know that this is a franchise that they just keep pushing out because it makes money. And the more you push those out, obviously there's some sort of like audience fatigue. I know that some of the other ones that came after a bit of a break are considered good. I haven't played them, I can't judge, but how many Assassin's Creed games are out in the 16 years this franchise has been around?
I think it's getting close to 20 now.
Again, because I think the first one was 2007, so I think it's 16.
I think you're right.
Quick math, it's 16. So back on
Yeah.
the entire
But like,
Ubisoft
well,
thing.
I
I
you
just want to
know,
share a very funny thing
oh yeah.
because you mentioned Watch Dogs, and I remember when they announced it, there was such hype for it, and people were like, "Oh my god, this new IP from Ubisoft! This is gonna be amazing! This was mind blowing!" And I watched it when it was revealed at E3, and I'm like, I'm not really that impressed. If anything, I'm kind of bored by this presentation. But everyone's like, no, 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 you missed it. Like you missed the point. It's so interesting. And then when the game came out and reviews were mixed, I'm like, told you guys.
Watch Dogs was very meh, but Watch Dogs 2 was a little bit better.
That's what I heard.
That's not
That's the
saying much though.
general.
But at least Watch Dogs 2 had a little bit more, I guess you'd say, like
I mean,
personality to it.
but at least it improved from the first one,
Fair,
and
fair.
that's what a good sequel should
And I
do.
think
So
the one that came after that was everyone raved about, like the one where you could play as grandma throughout the game. Like everyone loved that thing, that idea.
never heard of it. I don't think
I
I've heard
forget
of it.
the name for it.
But anyway, back to Captain Laserhawk because we are talking about it. And
Legion, Watch Dogs Legion. But yeah, like
watch
I want to
so
segue into my thoughts on Captain Laserhawk.
before that, let's say first of all, non-spoiler talk. We're
Yes.
starting with that. When we're about to go into spoilers, we'll let you know because this show is still relatively recent.
Mhm.
So yeah. Anyway, yes. What did you think?
Segue from Ubisoft is pretty meh to this show's also meh to me. I did not much enjoy this show, I'll be honest. There's a few
I
good things
will.
here, but overall, I walk away going, eh. I didn't hate my
I'll
time
tell
with it, but
you.
eh.
I'll say I won't call it meh. I think it's a bit above a meh, but I also feel it's a this show is a pill to swallow. It's definitely something that you need to get used to, and
From
there's
what
a
I've
good chance that
seen online, looking around, because I was curious, it seems
Mhm.
this show's very divisive. You either enjoy it or you hate it. There's very little in between.
Yeah, I saw that too. Because I tell you what, I'm not sure if it's about spoil, but let's say some people got their childhoods murdered by this show. We'll talk about it, but yeah, but let's but for the sake of the argument, I would say overall, I really enjoyed this show. I am very aware that it's problematic. I'm very aware that it won't be for everyone. And like I said, there is the first episode at least. It's kind of you need to get used to it. You need to give this show time, which for the record is not that big of an ask because it's only 6 episodes and each episode is like 20 something minutes. So there were longer shows which asked for a lot more of my time and
Mhm.
my patience. So in that sense, I at least appreciate it for at least appreciating my time and also giving me something doing that time. Is the thing is though that there's a lot about it that I love, but when I'm looking back at it, I don't love the whole thing. There
Listen,
are things that
I'll
are
say this, right?
clunky.
Like something that really stood out to me and I think is really good from the show is number one, the animation and what felt like a lot of the shot choreography is
Yeah,
really good. Like if you're someone who's
and
really into that sort of thing, I think you're gonna have a lot to enjoy from the show. Even if you don't really care about the show itself, there's a lot of eye candy going on here, right?
and not only that, like the animation, like you said, is great, but also like those moments where they just change styles. They
Mm.
will do like those. They'll
Or
do
combine
some.
different styles too.
Yeah, I'll
Like
combine
that
different styles
like
and.
the early like 3D polygonal stuff, like sort of VR-ish mixed with just regular animation or the going into very 16-bit 2D art style stuff. It's very good. Like there's not
Mhm.
a lot to complain about from the looks of the show. Like
Yeah,
it's
there's
very
a there's a
unique in
lot
that
of
regard.
there's a lot of like it's a very interesting show to look at visually, and I think it helps with digesting that it's not your regular type of show. This is something that wants to be different, and I appreciate it for trying. And also, I would say the voice acting for all the characters is really well done. I don't know what other projects the guy who voiced Rayman in this show did, but for this version of the character, he did fantastic. And ironically, named David, like Rayman's voice actor in the games.
Mhm.
This is your random fact of the day.
The music in this is also really well done as well. But
Yeah,
I think
I know that
it's
some tracks are taken from their respective franchises. I recognize two Rayman tracks,
yeah,
but don't ask me for more.
and I think they remixed them a little bit. But the music composer is Oscillion, apparently a Swedish synthwave person. Don't
Hmm.
If you're from Sweden, maybe you would know more. I do not know of this person all that much, but yeah, they do a
Well,
ton of stuff that meshes well with the cyberpunk theme.
mhm.
But yeah, like the music
Interesting.
is really good. Like yeah,
Yeah, so good music, like everything really, like all the technical stuff are really well done, and
there's
and
not a
again,
lot to
I'd
complain
say
about
that.
with that, in my opinion.
Mhm. I also say that for the again, I think if you like the show or not, it really comes down to how much you're willing to accept.
Well,
Something that I would probably want to talk about in an episode of its own, but how much you're willing to accept that these characters are basically the characters from those franchises in name only,
yeah,
and
it's definitely.
otherwise.
It feels like one. This show plays a lot off of hey, these characters already. If you don't, I don't think you're going to enjoy this at all if you don't know anything about any of these characters, right?
Thing that
But
I before this, for refreshment and just for experiment, I watched it with a friend of mine, and she the only game I think she knows for sure it's Rayman because she's a friend of mine, so of course she knows who Rayman is. It's like you sign a contract when you become my friend.
yeah,
You are gonna know who Sonic the Hedgehog and Rayman are.
I remember
But
signing it. Yeah.
mhm. Besides that, she took a bit of time to get used to it, but she enjoyed a lot of the other characters, and like there's a character that they really changed in this show, and he became her favorite. I want to say, at least she got engaged in his story. It's Sam Fisher from Spindle Cell. If you know what is going through in there, you know. If not, watch the show and come back for the spoilers.
hmm hmm
But I think there is enough for like newcomers to get into it because honestly, because for all
Well,
intents and purposes, the show is not fan servicey to the point it could have been, and I kind of respect it for not trying to rely on these characters, so we don't have to necessarily explain everything. These are new versions, and they take time to establish these versions. Now, if you like what they did with them, it's a different story. And considering again, considering one of them is a very childhood character for a lot of people, it can be a bit jarring. And I know to some it was.
I would say you'll see very few complaints about the technical aspects of things with this show, in my opinion. But it's the characters and the story and the writing that I think
It's the
it's going to be very
entire
hit or
creative
miss.
side of it.
Yeah, the
Yeah, it's the
creative side of
creative side of it.
it's going to be very hit or miss for many people. Whether you're a fan of these characters in their original series or not, I think it's still going to be very hit or
I'll,
miss.
I think the best way I can look at it is if you are willing to accept the fact that this is another version of insert character here, like how there are a lot of versions of the Ninja Turtles, for example. Some are more lighthearted, some are darker, or with Spider-Man that, or any other superhero, that there are a lot of versions out there with different tones, different some things change and everything. If you're willing to accept it as a different take on these characters, there's a good chance you're gonna enjoy it. If you are against touching these franchises and you think it's too hard of a shift, avoid.
Yep.
All that being said, spoilers.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're about to start talking spoilers. If you haven't seen the show and you're interested, this is your chance to close the video, go watch it, and then come back. So we're gonna wait here the entire time that the show is gonna take because because it's a pretty short show. I'm of course kidding. Go watch it. We're starting spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Still here, good. My boy does cocaine. I saw Raymond drink alcohol and do cocaine.
And murder people.
Modern people, I don't care. He shoots he shoots robots and stuff in his own games. That's I. It wasn't as big of a shift as just to see him drunk and high of cocaine. These were the
Well,
two
he's no
childhood
longer your boy
punches.
Rayman. Remember, he's Ramon now.
I am not accepting that. That's the one thing I'm not gonna accept. He's Rayman.
That
Was
was so
always will
stupid.
be.
I will admit, I enjoyed the little small side story we got with Rayman's character and how
You know
he
what?
developed.
Since we
That was one of the
started,
good things.
I tell you what. Since we started on it, I'm gonna give my boy the starting line. Rayman was done really well. I won't say he's one of the main characters, but his arc is one of the more interesting ones. And I'm
Agreed.
not saying this just because I'm biased.
No, I would agree. Like, Rayman's not something I personally care about. I will admit it's not my favorite thing as far as video game mascot characters go. But I,
Because you have no heart.
I don't at all. It's just a hole there. But he definitely is, I think, one of the better things about this show as far as character arcs and little character stories go. Yeah, he's not, a main character. He's definitely a side character, but he's definitely one of the more interesting ones.
Mhm. And I really found it interesting the way they handle them because because when it starts out it's like, okay, so they made him a newscaster. All right, sure, I guess. Considering I was so thirsty to see him in something, this I guess like I just kind of take it. But then when you just kind of see that he's became one of those celebrities which eventually the public eye can escape because watching his show is mandatory. He's a movie star. He's a kid star. He's basically the face of an empire which took over the world. And I'm like, all right, this is it. This is kind of interesting. And the moment where he suddenly find out that the essentially the company, the corporation which made them their face is suddenly turning on him because he stood up for himself on live TV. And suddenly everything comes crashing down. That was, again, just this. And it also kind of sadly fits what he's been going through in real life because, again, like I said, 10 years since the last real Rayman game. I'm not bitter, but
Listen, I mean, like, before we get to it, my favorite character from the show actually was Frog. I kind
I
of liked our
figured.
little Assassin's Creed Frog. He was fun. He was enjoyable. He was
Yeah,
probably another one of the few good things about this show.
and I am so happy with how they handled him because once you have a cartoon frog in a show like this, then you can expect it to be the comic relief, and to some extent he is. But they handled him with a lot of dignity, a lot
I
more than I would.
wouldn't say he was the comic relief. I would say,
That's what I'm saying. That
oh,
that they
okay,
could have made him the comic
I
relief,
see now.
but they didn't.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree. I think the comic relief came from two other characters who
Mm-hmm.
lasted. One of them lasted basically
Episodes.
an episode. Her screen time, if you put it all together, was probably in total half an episode, and the other
I was
character
so
lasted a bit
pissed.
longer. I wasn't pissed, but like I think we need to ask the question at this point, man. Ubisoft, do you have a problem? Because it seems like you have a problem with Beyond Good and
Oh,
Evil. It
yeah.
seems like you have some issues, and we need to work through that.
Honestly,
I think we need to have an
this is
intervention with
actually
you because
no.
holy
Actually,
shit,
you say
Ubisoft.
that? No, no. Listen, you say that. Apparently, one of the ways that Ubisoft would resist greenlighting risky ideas is they would tell people we approved Beyond Good and Evil, and that was a mistake.
Not surprised.
So there's bitterness there, and if you're and again, I should also mention that Beyond Good and Evil 2 officially passed Duke Nukem Forever as the longest time it took to develop a game by a big studio.
Listen, that game's never coming out, and if it does come out, that game is going to be awful. If you're a
I'm
fan of
sad
Beyond
to
Good and Evil,
say
just accept that you had
I,
one good game
I
and you're not getting anything
listen.
else ever.
No,
It's
listen.
done.
I would consider myself a fan of Beyond Good and Evil. I won't
Same.
say that it's perfect like a lot of some
No,
other people would say, but also, for the love of God, what is taking so long? Why a prequel? What are you doing?
why
And
are
I
they
know
doing
some of it
anything
can
that they're
go to
doing with
Michel
that game?
Ancel, and that is, but it's like somebody just take control of this ship, make it happen.
Don't just let it die. Just let it die. I'm sorry. Just
Mm,
let us have the one game we had, and we just forget about Beyond Good and Evil 2 ever being a thing. It never happened or existed. We just forget about it. They had the one good one, and we just move on with our lives. Nothing else happened or exists.
uh,
No need to be
and
hopeful.
apparently that's
Forget
kind
it.
of what Ubisoft thinks, and
I
guess
mean, I
that's what
don't
Ubisoft
disagree
thinks
with
because
them, but
no,
also I think they have some issues because
no,
they
listen,
killed Jade
Jade.
so quick. But even more than that, right? The entire scene of like just it was so fucking
Not only
odd.
do they kill her, not only do they shoot her through the heart, but then as a way of escape, Captain Laserhawk ask the warden to blow her head out as a way for them to escape.
Yeah, because they have bombs in their head. We'll get to that little story bit. But then the thing
No,
that
but like,
bothered me
listen,
more
this is
though
fucked up.
was
This is
the,
not just that she's
no, but
died, that she's dead 2 episodes in. This is like, this is fucked up.
that's the irreverency though. Like that's kind of expected from a show like this. It's the thing where it's like Paige tells Jade like, "Hey, I think I might be in love with you." It's like
No,
that's
listen. If
just
there's one, no, if there's one thing that I would say, what the fuck are you doing? Okay, and it does, and because it did turn me off, is the entire thing with Paige, because both in the game and here, Paige is Jade's uncle.
mm-hmm.
And in here, they even go beyond that, where he is actually mad at her and tells her, "I promised your parents that I will keep you safe. I promised your parents that I will keep you safe." And then suddenly he goes, "I have feelings for you." And one, they never do anything with it because Jade dies like 10 minutes afterwards. But then also, he's a fucking uncle.
Yeah, that one was wild, like just randomly inserted in
This
that we just moved past so fucking quickly. Like even when it's like
and
it feels like even the writers when they wrote it were like,
like,
did we really
like
write
either
that?
like
just go,
either
just ignore it, just go, just go. It's like
yeah,
good
but it's like
god.
but the other thing though, maybe it's just they were trying to course correct something that they could have just deleted altogether. But also, do you think it was done as a joke?
I mean, it has to be a joke, right? It has to be the irreverency
But
of
in
it
a way,
all. But
but I don't.
the
But even
problem though
so, as
is
even
right
as a
the
joke, it doesn't work.
well it's irreverent, and irreverent humor is fine. I'm perfectly okay with irreverent humor. I'm perfectly okay with taking something I love and turning it into a bit of a joke, right? Especially if you're doing it in good humor and in good jest, right? Like
Yeah,
it
the show even does this a bit too,
well, yeah, it does
especially
do
because
this. I think that's kind of the point of this show to some degree. But, right? But one, it's coming from Ubisoft, and two, it's coming from Ubisoft when we look at how they've treated Beyond Good and Evil so far.
Mhm.
It kind of feels like maybe this isn't in good humor, you know?
Which to be honest, let's say, I guess, we are talking as people who know that Beyond Good and Evil has been neglected by Ubisoft ever since it came out,
True.
basically. But like, let's assume you're a person who is just watching this show for the sake of watching a show. You won't necessarily think that. You
No,
won't necessarily get it, but even for those people, I would assume this part is just fucking weird because one, it
yeah,
doesn't lead to anyway, and two, they established that he's a parental figure to her.
yeah, I would
So
agree. I think it's going to come off as weird no matter what spectrum of the familiarity you have with these two characters, but it's definitely going to come off as more weird and more that's just wrong if you have a
yeah,
lot more familiarity with these characters.
mhm.
But I think that's a lot of the problem with this show, right?
And
It's
actually, now
trying to
that I think
do
about it, I think out of all of them, Jade is arguably the one that's the most like herself because she at least has the same occupation as her original counterpart.
agreed, and she seems to also be like the most similar to her general characterness. There wasn't much of it in the original
Yeah,
game, sure, but
well,
she
but the
just
thing is,
seems to
she
have
was a
more of her original
journalist,
character.
but she was a journalist fighting against the big evil corporation in an underdog, and it's basically what she's doing here.
I would say Paige
Just
is pretty close to his original
I'd say
character as well as
this one is a bit rougher. This one is a
yeah.
bit
Well,
tougher and rougher, but
and I
yeah,
think that's fine for like the cyberpunk aesthetic that they're
yeah.
going
Again,
for.
I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm just comparing.
No, fair, fair. And I think that's maybe what it looks like the second game prequel deal might be doing as well, maybe.
Which who knows, right?
Mm.
Because who the fuck knows what is going on with this game anymore? I should remind people it's been 6 years since it was re-announced. Not holding my breath.
Re-announced, by the way, not announced, re-announced.
Yeah, because it was quick history lesson. It was supposed to originally be a narrative sequel, and then they're like, actually, it's a prequel now, and we never saw it again.
Nope. But yeah, I think that's this being weird. The Paige and Jade thing being weird and out of nowhere, just not feeling right, is gonna be a common problem with this show because this is 6 episodes, about 20 minutes each per episode of what essentially would be a full season in most shows, and they're doing what they can with the 6 episodes, but it doesn't work because a lot of the twists and
Like,
turns just when they come up, you're
that's the thing. I don't know what exactly that little bit even gave. Well, spending so much time on it, but really, it's only a few seconds. Then don't go anywhere. It could have been
and
easily
then
cut.
Jade's gone.
And yeah, I
And they
will
try
say
to make
though,
it seem
her,
like a thing of like, oh, everyone's like super shocked when she's shot by pagan men, and it's like, am I supposed to care that they care because I don't know her? I
honestly,
just met her
and
last
that's actually
episode.
yeah, and that's actually a thing that if anything, the more drama there is when Laserhawk finds out that Alex basically cheated on him and sold him to an extent.
Like
That was
if
where the
I
emotion was.
if I look at if I look at me having no familiarity with Beyond Good and Evil at all, right? I don't know who Jade is. All I know from this show is her. My experience with Jade from this show would be okay, so she might be a journalist slash reporter. She's taking videos like she is. She had Paige is her uncle, and apparently her parents are dead, and she doesn't like doing femme fatale stuff. And then
That
apparently
femme
her
fatale stuff
uncle's
is for the show.
and apparently her uncle is oh yeah, that's just the entire show. That's just the show thing. But and apparently her uncle's in love with her. And then okay, she's dead now. All right, cool, I guess. I really
Coolio,
care
let's
about
move
that
on.
character.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm fully aware that Jade wasn't done well in this. Like for and Paige to an extent also because like he dies, he's killed at an episode after, and like his
He's
death
killed
is treated
protecting
as a bit.
another random girl. Like, I
Yeah.
just want to point that out. Like, you could have killed him protecting Jade, but no. Like, this is how you do it.
What?
And I get it, irreverency, but it just, eh, just eh, just eh. I mean, we've not talked about it, right? We should talk about what is the story of Captain Laserhawk, a Blood Dragon
Yeah,
remix.
probably
What
a
story
good,
there
but
is. The story
yeah.
is
So
Captain
go
Laserhawk,
for it.
Dolph Laserhawk, is apparently, they're very much front and center with that. He's in a romantic relationship with Alex Taylor, a character from The Crew, Ubisoft's racing game. Didn't even realize. Okay,
Huh.
just read that from Wiki, won't lie. But anyways, yeah, he's
Okay.
in a romantic relationship with them. They're trying to get out of, a city named Eden, and so they're gonna steal this thing, and that's going to make them a lot of money, and they're going to get out of Eden and just go live somewhere on a beach and just be happy together. Well,
However,
Alex betrays Laserhawk right at the end, and thinks he's dead, but apparently Laserhawk gets turned into the Warden, aka Sarah Fisher, and he's locked in a supermax prison and becomes a ghost, basically someone who doesn't exist anymore and takes his orders directly from the Warden. And he's teamed up with Bullfrog, the Assassin's Creed frog.
mm,
He's teamed up with
um, there's Jade,
Jade,
Page,
Paige.
and there's another person there who dies after in
Yeah,
the first episode
Cody
and
Rhodes.
never.
He's basically there to get his head blown up to show that the Warden
Who
implanted bombs in all their brains. That's what
I
he's there
know
for.
he's from something. I know he's
Yeah,
from
he's
something.
he's Cody Rhodes is WWE.
Hmm. I hope that WWE fans don't mind because wow.
There's also, again, Kenny Omega is also in here, as I mentioned. He's an AEW wrestler. I don't know where the fuck he was even shown at. I don't remember him at all, I'll be honest. But Cody Rhodes, I remember because he dies in the first episode or second episode, essentially. But yeah, like
Yeah.
and then the story is just them doing a few things and trying to. They do 2 missions for the Warden, and then shit hits the fan. Uh,
And basically, let's say that by the halfway point, only Laserhawk and Bullfrog are alive
yes,
from this
Alex
crew,
Taylor's dead. Laserhawk kills him in that final, mission,
which was actually a
4.
really good fight.
Which is episode 4. Yeah, it was fun. That was really good. It was well done. Even Bullfrog's moment was in that episode was really good and well done when he's taking on like the 3 pagan men goons that Alex, took with him because pagan men was killed.
Then we also need to keep in mind that the reason they're doing this is because the basically the company who basically took over the world, Eden, they are a bunch of assholes.
They're the
I guess it's
Templars.
a good.
They're the
Yeah,
Templar Association. We find out later in like the final episode, they're essentially the Templar Association from Assassin's Creed.
yeah.
They've just
Mhm.
changed up somewhat.
Yeah, and but the thing is that Laserhawk and Alex used to basically work against them to the point that Eden tries to frame them as terrorists on Rayman's show,
Mhm.
and but like what happens is that Alex seems to have some sort of a plan to take them down by bringing in some aliens and hybrids from a place called Dimension X. I was afraid the Ninja Turtles were gonna show up when they said that
No, you get
because
the rabbits who look like basically giant kaiju monsters,
which for the
which was
record
fun.
I'm glad that they're only there to die because they need to die, but that's besides the point.
Hmm.
Th- Thing is, though, this is suddenly halfway through. We are starting to really delve into the idea of racism in this show, which interesting. Not really
Yeah.
doing a lot with it.
No, it's basically just the racism thing of like, hey, we have hybrid animals who we use to like make basically products that we sell to humans, other humans, and we just treat the hybrid animals like absolute shit, and no one gives a shit
Yeah.
about them. And in that final episode, right? Well, not in the final episode, but in the last mission they do, I think it's episode 4. Alex, creates some glasses that gets everyone, that gets
It's
all
on
the
episode 3.
humans. Yeah, episode 3. Sure, I thought it was. Either way, doesn't matter. Yeah, they create some glasses. They get all the humans to start attacking the hybrids that they call them, and trying to basically stoke the fires of hate to bring Eden down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Paige dies protecting another person from Eden's police force, who basically just start shooting all the hybrids, because that's when they get
Yeah,
there.
but that's the thing that besides this scene, the racism thing just seems to be an something for Raymond's character arc, which again is done well, but they seem to forget about it afterwards.
Yeah, like right before this, when the giant rabbit kaiju are killed, you hear Red from Niji 6, which is the Rainbow Six
That
Siege reference.
this was such a random thing because I know I haven't played Rainbow Six, but I know that there are no Power Rangers
No, they
Voltron
just
Max in it.
the Power Rangers were just a thing from, oh, the rainbow is in the name, so we'll just go with the Niji 6, and they're a
Yeah.
rainbow, aka Rainbow Six Siege. It's so wild, but
Very,
it
very,
works.
very.
It's
I get
it's
it
one of those things
works.
of, what, this is clever. I will give you this one. This is a clever, play on the name, my opinion.
Mhm. Yeah,
But yeah, he
it
says
was
something
done well, but
racist
in
towards the hybrids, and Raymond's like, "Fuck you," and then that's when they fire him essentially and get rid of
mhm,
him.
yeah,
And
and that
that's
basically
when he
starts
starts
the
going.
point.
Yeah, that's when he starts going on his arc, his edgy
Yeah,
arc.
but that's something I really like, that he gets the message of talk to the frog, and so he sneaks into Bullfrog's cell, and there's something really really tragic about him, that he just wanted to entertain, he wanted to do something good, but and Eden gave him that platform, and then he finds out that all the stuff that he told him to say, he feels used. They used him.
Mm.
They used his dream and ambitions against him, because he essentially hurt more than he helped, and that's heartbreaking for this guy. For, I guess, a lot of people who kind of like me, who studied and majored in something that's supposed to be, in something that's supposed to provide entertainment, like a film or game or even game development or something like that, and suddenly hear that what you created and your success brought brought so much troubles, and brought so much sadness to other people. That's that's a lot to go through. And I like the scene actually in the bathroom where he's talking to his own reflection, and he goes, it's like they helped us, they built us, they made us who we are, and he says, no, they didn't.
Mm.
They did. And it's such a good story, honestly. Like, again, biased aside, it's a really well done subplot. I really enjoyed that.
No, I don't disagree. It's one of the good ones. But yeah, like Eden, as well as our big bad guy, are kind of like pseudo big bad guy for a little bit, in that they are basically, the U.S. has been turned into one super capitalist, hellscape owned by one megacorp, and Eden is that megacorp, and they're like super awful. They do inhumane things to prisoners. They, use child soldiers and a whole bunch of other just awful, awful, terrible shit. Because that's what we do in cyberpunk and capital and super capitalism. That sort of stuff. You've seen it before, heard it before. You've seen it 1,000 times elsewhere. It's nothing new there. But actually, dun dun dun, our big villain isn't Eden. It's Sarah Fisher.
Yeah, this is
The
something that
I
I am
loved.
not.
Go ahead.
This is something that I'm not entirely sure about. This, like, it's a good. I guess it's a good twist, and to some extent, because we do
I
get
didn't think it was a
backstory on
twist at
her.
all, because they gave us
Wait,
her
wait, wait.
backstory. It's like, hey, you're gonna feel sorry for her. Look at this terrible history she has and where she came from, and she ended up, being the cause of her father's death and all these other horrible things. And I'm just sitting there and they're going through and giving us this backstory for her. And I'm like, this doesn't change anything. She's still a bitch. She's been a bitch the
Yeah,
entire time. Oh, she's still a bitch when you reveal it in the okay, so I was right. She's just a bitch. That's what she is, a bitch. Okay, we can move on. None of that was necessary. You didn't
yeah,
need to
but
try this.
the thing is, the thing I'm calling this a twist. The reason I'm calling this a twist is because the show seems to treat it as if it's a twist, but she's always kind of been an asshole, as we saw, you know. And for the record, they do a good job establishing her. I like her backstory. I just, what is her grand plan is something that's not really established, and I guess we
It
need to
seems her
wait.
grand it seems her grand plan is she wants basically she's the one who got Rayman to go kill the rest of the council, the other, Templar members essentially. Because you can see one of the Templar symbols is on her back as the robot spider thing she is. And she's basically wanting to create a new Templar council. And she's recruiting Marcus Holloway, the Watch Dogs
But the thing
2
is,
main character,
before
to
we
help
go
her
to
run the
Holloway,
council.
yeah, before we get to Holloway though, I just want to say, you see what you just said here. I think you're right, but
Oh no,
here's
I
the
am
thing.
right. That's what they're going for. That's what they're doing.
If this is what they're going for, then I don't think it was clear enough, or at least it was more hinted at than
No,
outright
what
stated
is
or
fucking
shown.
stupid. What it is you're never getting a second season for this. Don't expect a payoff.
I honestly, if there's no second season for this, I will be really disappointed.
Listen, I guarantee you I know what Ubisoft is going to do with this show. If this show gets a second season, what's going to happen is what you saw here was one universe. They're going to do I think it's Love, Death, and Robots thing of just, hey, here's the Ubisoft characters you know and maybe love, maybe don't care about, but here's the Ubisoft characters you know, and we're just going to put them in different quote unquote universes with different animation styles each time and just do something different each time. I just about bet you that's what they're going to do because the way this is shot, the way this is the way the story, the character writing, everything comes from this 6 episode. They can't do a second season for this. If they do a second season, one, all of
Because
your
they
main
hint at
characters,
it.
they don't. All your main characters are Laserhawk's dead, Jade's dead, Paige dead. Only ones who are alive is
You
Rayman
did
Frog,
you see?
Sarah
Did you
Fisher,
see
and
the?
Marcus.
Did you see like? Did you just see like? Did you see that little scene with the sprites that like Laserhawk gets like? Oh, so this is what that is, and then suddenly Sam Fisher shows up, and there's like this continue screen, and it chooses yes. This is a
Sam
cliffhanger.
Sam Fisher's also I don't buy it. Nah, it's all they're not getting a second season for this show. I refuse to believe that because they're not going to
Right
continue
now,
this
we
on
don't
because they
know.
can't continue it on. There's just no way. It doesn't work to continue this, in my opinion.
Hmm.
If they continue it,
That's
I guarantee you what it's going to be is they're going to do basically it's a completely different thing now. Something completely separate that is not connected to this story at all. At least not at first. Maybe they'll do some like, oh, big brained, it's all connected at the end sort of thing if they get more. But I don't buy it. Don't buy it at all. Because
well.
again, it's
Then I'll tell you
Ubisoft.
what.
Ubisoft can't make anything original. They can only chase trends now. That's all they can do. And the trend they're chasing is the Love Death Robots thing. I would just about bet you.
I tell you what. I'm not right now. There's no confirmation whether or not it's continuing
I mean,
or
I don't
not.
think you're going to get any confirmation at all. I don't think it's going
So
to
hear me
continue.
out. Hear me out. Hear me out. If this doesn't get a second season with this ending, then you know what, my toleration and my appreciation for the show goes down a long way because this is not an ending. This is not a satisfying ending.
I don't think it's supposed to be.
The way it's
I
so
think
you
that's
think that
I think that's the
you
point.
you okay, so that's the point. So we're just supposed to to be left with this image of, well, draw your own conclusion.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's the point. I think the point is you're supposed to just kind of figure out, okay, so she creates her
Fair
second
enough.
council and maybe it's slightly better but still awful,
Then
you know,
then fair enough. But then
dystopia
again,
cyberpunk.
but to this I would say, and you can disagree with me, you can agree, I don't know. but I felt like even if for something that's supposed to be left open, the story doesn't feel complete to me.
I mean, that's kind of the problem with the show, though. It's 6 episodes. It's never going to feel complete, right? Because they try and cram an
Well,
entire
I'll tell
season
you what
or
though,
multiple
if
seasons,
they
really.
knew,
At least 2 seasons. Like, this feels like a show that episode 5 and 6 feel like, okay, that's a season 2 conclusion, and then you have all of season 1 being them doing the missions for the warden, and then season 2 is when the warden is revealed as I am the true evil. It's like, yeah, all right, we already knew that. And then you have the conclusion to that. This feels like 2 seasons worth of story and character stuff crammed into 6 episodes.
and
And
that's the thing. If they knew that there's not going to be anything else after this, then you know what? I am gonna criticize. You could have found a way to resolve this in 6 episodes. You
I
could
don't
have.
think you could have, because again, there's just so many things going on here that you need more episodes for, and you're not getting it. And again, I think that's the point. You're supposed to just super read into in between the lines and just kind of know, okay, these are the things that are going on in the background, right? You're just supposed to, from the barest minimum that you're given, understand, okay, this is the background of this character. This is the background of these characters. All right. Like, you're just supposed to understand, like Frog, he talks about how, hey, revenge, don't go down that road. It's not worth it. And you're supposed to just read from that. Okay, so Frog's been through some bullshit in the back in the day, apparently, in his
Mhm.
past, and that's what you're supposed to infer. The same with Laserhawk. The same with Jade and Paige, and the same with Rayman. Right? You get a little bit more of some characters' backstories and pasts, but you're just supposed to kind of just read in between the lines of what's going on here and what's happening, right? And you're supposed to just infer that and then move on and go with the rest and go with the flow the rest of the way and see where it ends. And then you're
And
supposed to
I
infer
guess
what happens
so.
after the end.
But it's not an excuse for a story not feeling complete, in my opinion.
No, I'm not saying it is, but I think that's the idea. You're just supposed to infer a lot of things from the information they do give you and what they do show you,
Which is an
which I
interesting.
kind of
It's an
respect
interesting way.
because it's a show that says, "Hey, you can figure it the fuck out, and if you can't, well, whatever. We're done." I kind of
No,
respect that a little
and I
bit.
tell you what, I respect it too, but I still feel if this is what they were aiming for, then I feel it's really the at least the way they wrapped it up is a bit close.
Listen, if they come out later and say, "Hey, we're doing season 2," then I'm entirely wrong here. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Shoot foot in
Which
mouth.
right now, at the time of this recording, there's no confirmation as
No,
far as I'm aware.
but I don't think there's going to be a season 2. I think the entire point of it is just infer what you will, and we move on. If there's a season 2, I feel like it's going to be something that is entirely different, right? Is that they're going to go for an entirely different type of style, an entirely different type of world, but it'll just be similar characters again. My personal
Yeah.
opinion.
All I see here about it is that people said that there's speculation there's speculation about the renewal, and if it's gonna happen in either 2025 or 2026.
Which is fair, considering everything that's been going on. There
Yeah,
is, from what I see, a yaoi manga for Laserhawk and Alex, but that's it.
because of course there is because
I mean,
which
fair.
for the record
Like,
their relationship
I
is interesting.
I will say, how many shows do we get with a gay relationship? Most of the time it's lesbians. This time it's actually gay
I
men, and it's
mean,
like,
I'm
that's a
pretty sure there are
rarity. I
some.
mean, there's some,
Yeah,
but that's a rarity, I
but like
feel.
I get you though that, and also like they felt real, like their interaction.
There was
It
definitely history
does.
there, right? There was chemistry
Yeah,
there.
there's history there, but also like you got it. Like it's one of the first thing it's one of the first things you see
Hmm.
in this show, and it
Yeah,
works. You
I
get it.
won't lie. I was caught off guard. Like, oh, okay, they're kissing. All right, that caught me off guard. Did not expect that at all. But all right, I'm here for it. Let's go. Like, completely wild and out of nowhere in the first episode, but I'm here for it. I respect it. Let's go. You know.
Hmm. Well, so yeah, basically they were great. The characters themselves were great, and a lot of the story elements are good. And also,
Most of the characters.
I really enjoyed the final climax and stuff. I enjoyed Rayman, killing the board of directors and stopping Bullfrog from being killed. That was great. But now that we actually talk about it, when there's this entire thing of maybe if there's no second season, what you're saying is right, and this is all we get, then I honestly feel I kind of feel bittersweet because one, kudos for trying to just do those 6 episodes, and however things are gonna wrap up, that's up to you to decide. This is up for you to figure out through hints
Hmm.
we planted.
Go
But
write some
I
fan
also feel,
fiction, motherfuckers.
yeah, but it also feel, but it honestly, in some ways, it also feels like we couldn't really think up of any way to wrap this up. So, yeah, we are totally creative. This is totally a creative decision.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's an issue of, you know, there's an interesting idea here, right? There's something they
Hmm.
could have taken and expanded upon and done a lot here with, and done potentially a lot here with. I'm not sure it would have been good. I have no fucking clue if it would have been good. It might have been, but it also might have been super terrible if they tried to expand on this and make it a full season thing, right? Or potentially a full 2 seasons, considering the ending and how I feel like this is a 2 season show crammed into 6 episodes, essentially. My personal opinion.
That's something that I didn't want to say, that the first 3 episodes and the last 3 episodes do feel like two different plots.
Yeah. So with that said, there's something here. You maybe could have done something with it. I cannot guarantee it would have been good. I cannot guarantee it would have been amazing. It might have been, but it might not have been. But what I can say, right, is that I like the ideas, but personally, I don't think I would have, unless other than us covering it for this show, I don't think I would have stuck around for it, right? I think I would
Eh,
have, I think if you extended this out to be more, I I probably would have started to tune out a little bit more and more because I don't think it's that interesting.
I would say that it is interesting. I enjoyed some of the stuff here, a lot of the stuff here even. I just there is there is definitely a hurdle to
Listen,
jump over
I'm
though, and
sorry.
it's not perfect.
I don't care enough about Rayman to see him go through his dark arc, right? You know, for a full
Well,
season.
okay,
I just
which
don't care.
again, which this is kind of brings us back to something we said
I don't
earlier.
care to see them extend out the will they, won't they with Jade and her uncle. Like, no, I'm not interested. To see
Yeah,
that
okay.
extended out for a full season or
And to be
potentially
fair,
2 seasons.
I will say this. I get you, and I think it's really hard to recommend this kind of show. And now talking about it more and more, it's hard to really recommend something that's as you saw, as you said earlier, you saw some of the feedback it got online, and I've seen some of it too. It's a very divisive show, and because it
Hmm.
really pushes, you know, it really pushes this line of how much can you really change when you say that you are adapting something.
I
And
don't know if I'd
not
call
only
this an adaptation.
but not only that, it's also kind of like how like how can you really
Well, I think
get
it's
a
a
lot of
question
people
of
to uh,
how
bec-
respectful do you be when you're taking something from one franchise and doing something different, right? How respectful do
true.
you have to be? How disrespectful can you be? How much, how much of a homage should you pay to the original creation? Do you have
Yeah.
to? There's a lot of questions you can ask there. And personally, I err on the side of you don't have to do any of that. You don't have to be respectful. You don't have to pay an homage to any of it. You could completely eschew everything from the original and say, nah, fuck the original. We're going to do
But at
our
the same
thing.
time, just make a new show and don't use these characters.
Number one, that. Number two, if that's what you choose to do, then, you know, you get the shit you're given, right? Like if people hated what you created, then and you're given shit for it, well, that's the bed you made for yourself. Now lie in it essentially, right? If
Yeah.
people loved it and people really enjoyed what you created, then great, more power to you. You did something that worked. But did it work because that community, that fan base of that original thing was still, accepting of it, that they were still like that they still appreciated what you did, or did it work because they just don't give a shit about, like, irreverent, like, I'm trying to think. There's a few things that have been created that took something from an original series or franchise or whatever, and did something very irreverent with it. And I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but no one
If I
really
may, to
cared, right?
to an
Because it was still
extent,
good.
I'll tell you what. Maybe not the best example, but when you take the Ninja Turtles, the
Hmm,
original comic book that started the whole franchise is really dark, really violent. It
true.
was, in a way, it was a parody of Daredevil in a lot of ways.
Yes,
And but then if you ask most people what was their introduction to this franchise, they will tell you the 80s cartoon. And the 80s cartoon is nothing like the original
well,
comic.
even beyond that, though, like, we've seen Ninja Turtles do many other different styles and different things, right? Some
Yeah.
aimed at younger audiences and some aimed at much older audiences, right?
Hmm.
And no one's complained about a lot of that. A lot of that's still looked at from many different people as still, that's still Ninja Turtles. That's still pretty decent or good even.
Like, there are some and there
But I
are some,
think,
right? Like, but at the same
but I,
time,
I
though,
think though it
there's the
works
core
for
is there.
Ninja Turtles
Hmm.
because Ninja Turtles is originally inspired as a parody of, like you said, Daredevil. And I think that's why
Hmm.
it works for Ninja Turtles. I think that's why Ninja Turtles can get away with being a parody of itself almost, because it started off as that. So people are willing to accept it more. When you do something like
Which again,
this,
I guess it depends though on what you necessarily do with it, because even with something like the Ninja Turtles, let's us there are some, some way to look at it actually. Like, across the Spider Verse, how many versions of Spider Man are there? Not just
true,
cinematic. A lot. There are so many different variations in the comics, games, cartoons, the movies, you
true.
name it. And
There's a lot.
but like, as Across the Spider Verse says, there's this like canon event, because yeah, you can call it Spider Man, but like there are things that need to be there for it to feel like Spider Man.
True. Like, there's
There
that there
needs to be,
like this, like you said, the canon event. There's that thing that needs to happen, that, the quote unquote Uncle Ben of that Spider-Man
and
has to die.
not necessarily in terms of Uncle Ben, but like there are things about Spider-Man that people expect to see
Yeah.
when they go see something about it. It doesn't necessarily have to be there, but there's some, like, the suit. You can't change the suit too much, for example,
Mhm.
or like you said, like with the backstory, there needs to be something there that reminds you of that, or something, or something else. And with every other franchise that's been around for so long, there are those things that you just gonna expect to be there. You can play with the tone as much as you want, but something needs to stay there. And to bring up another thing, How to Train Your Dragon, the movies and the books are nothing like each other, but the core of them is the same: Hiccup and Toothless.
Mm.
So, uh,
Well, yeah.
so
No, I don't disagree. I think you're right, right? Like, that there is potentially, for a lot of things that are remade into a different series, or different from that are pulled from an original, that are very different, there's a core that needs to be there. I would argue for a show like this, the core they're pulling from, for, like, say, Beyond Good and Evil, there's not a lot there other than
no,
Paige is
not at
Jade's
all.
uncle and
Again,
Jade's parents are dead.
you could have named them two different things, and nobody would even think these are Beyond Good and Evil references.
True. But I think so. While it feels really fucking weird that they did the "hey, your uncle's in love with you" thing for a brief few seconds and then killed Paige, or it killed Jade, it doesn't bother me too much. Like, I kind of like, okay, that's a little messed up and a little odd and off-putting and weird, but kind of shrug and move on. I don't really care, because there's not a lot to Beyond Good and Evil.
Mhm.
Rayman, you can say there's a little bit more to, but they weren't really disrespectful in a way. It feels like to Rayman, they were just
That's
doing
the
something
thing that
different with Rayman.
like I need to squint my eyes for it, but in a way they did kind of parody what happened with the character in real life. He was the Ubisoft mascot for a bit, and then people just kind of forgot about him because the rabbits happened.
Listen, there's a lot you can look at this show and say, man, Ubisoft, do you see what this
And
show is
like
about? And then
honestly,
yourself.
we barely talked about him. We barely talked about it, but like, let's talk about there's Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell. When was the last time Splinter Cell had a game? Now that I think about
It's
it.
been he's been put in like the oh, what's it called, the ghost stuff, like, which is, the ghosts from this game are a reference to, essentially, from the Tom Clancy's, like, thing, right? They do the Tom Clancy ghosts, the Tom Clancy like
Well,
the
to
Tom
be
Clancy
honest, Splinter
brand,
Cell,
essentially.
yeah, and Splinter Cell was a part of the Tom Clancy brand,
But
so not
Splinter
surprising.
Cell, Splint, but like Sam Fisher and Splinter Cell in general have been referenced in like the Tom Clancy brand and in Rainbow Six. He's like a character in Rainbow Six as well now, like an operator, essentially. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, like it's like he's basically trotted out as a, hey, remember this thing? Here you go, have it,
Hmm.
and then they just
Yeah,
kind of forget about him again.
you look at his character there. When was he ever in a wheelchair? And not to say that it's discrediting the character, because look at what he's able to do. He's a fucking badass. But like this is also a thing. Like when you take into account that Splinter Cell, as far as I'm aware, the last game was before 2010. I think I'm not entirely sure.
It's old.
Uh, no, I mean like the last one released.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
I
think there
know.
wasn't
There
there
was one.
wasn't one.
Blacklist was 2013. I think that was the last one.
That's so kind of like Rayman. That's been 10 years since this franchise has seen the light of day, and I'm not sure if they're planning on something to do with it or if anything. But you look at it and it's like this: you basically ignore the character for 10 years and then you bring him back like this, which again he does great in this show. But then you kind of also turn his daughter into the main villain, and I'm not sure if Sarah is actually from the games. I'm not sure
I
on
mean, he
that.
has a
But
family in the games, but I don't think it's like, I think his family's killed or something. And
uh,
there's stuff where, like, he's like, oh, I'm retired, but I'm being brought back in because they do that shit because
mhm.
that's a thing that you do
Which
in
I
U.S.
guess
military games.
at this point they're just mocking of the cliches they need to put in there
Yeah, and this
because.
show does the same, right? Like, he's an old retired military vet who's a fucking badass, and he's fucking amazing, and you get to see that for a bit. And again, it's checking off some of those same cliches.
Mhm.
And I think it's interesting what they do with his daughter, but like I said, right, when she's telling her backstory and everything, and it's like, oh, hey, it's the kid that gave up, Dead Sec
Mhm.
and her dad, and got them all arrested and thrown in prison and shit like that. It's like,
Yeah.
we're just gonna gloss over the fact that it was her who did that in this backstory. Like, Laserhawk's not gonna ask a single question about that, even though, like, okay, so
Yeah.
she's a bitch. That's what you're saying here.
Yeah.
Like, you're continue like, you're showing me this backstory, and again, I come back to this. Like, she's a bitch. You're not trying to win. If you're trying to win me over, you're failing hard at this. I'm not gonna believe that. I'm not gonna believe you that she's actually a good person and she's trying to save the day. No, she's here to do some other stupid shit and just kind of ruin everything. That's her goal from
Mhm.
moment one, and this changes none of that. And lo and behold, this changes none of that. And that's
Yeah.
that's kind of the problem with a lot of stuff, I think, that goes on in the show. Things
And
happen
that's
and
kind
they
of the
change
main
nothing.
thing that yeah, that's the thing though. So things happened, and now if the show is over, then I just basically saw a bunch of things happen which I enjoyed seeing
You
happening.
saw a bunch of
But
things happen with characters you probably know and possibly loved, and either you liked that or you didn't. End of discussion.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's this show. If it gets a second season, I would not be surprised if it's, hey, here's the characters you know and possibly love, and we're doing something completely different with them this time in a completely different style, blah, blah, blah. I would not be surprised if that's what they do.
Yeah. So honestly, I'm not sure. Is it gonna be a thing that's gonna continue on? Is it not gonna be a thing that's gonna continue on? I don't know. But again, I enjoyed what I saw. I will
There's
say
nothing wrong.
that it
Again,
was
I come back to
some. I
I
just want to
didn't
say it
hate
was a bit
this.
clunky.
I
Yeah,
didn't
I
hate
didn't hate
this.
this. I
I
I actually would recommend giving it a shot, especially if you're a fan of the franchises that
I don't know if I
is okay
recommended it.
with the stuff that they do here, then you know what? I think it's gonna be a good time for you. But if this is really where it ends, then I think it kind of missed the mark on what it wanted to be.
I again, like I said from moment one, I walked away feeling meh, and meh is not a bad thing. I've said it for many Ubisoft games. I don't hate them. They're just like this, competently made. They are fine, just like this. It is fine. It is competently made, and I didn't hate my time with it. And it even kept me, engrossed for the time I was watching it. Like, I would dare say I enjoyed my time with it, but that doesn't say much, right?
Yeah.
Something being an enjoyable time waster doesn't mean it's necessarily good.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean it's bad, but it doesn't mean it's good. It's just there to fill the void.
Like I had fun for like an hour, and now I can move on to other things, which will
Pretty
stick in
much.
my mind for longer.
Yeah. I think there's, you'll probably remember the Rayman doing cocaine, and then you'll kind of, nothing else will stick with you for the most part. Maybe
To
one or
some
two other things,
people,
but
that was to some people this was actually enough. They are like,
yeah,
yeah, okay, Raymond does cocaine. This is it.
we
This
get
is not
Assassin's
what
Creed
I need.
Frog. Yeah, right, I'm happy with this. I'm fulfilled. And if that's the case, great. I'm happy for you. I would have liked more personally. I think they could have done more. And for whatever reason, they chose not to. Maybe that was the smart decision. Maybe that was the wrong decision. I can't say. Maybe they weren't allowed to. I can't say, right? I don't know since I'm not a part of the production crew. What I can say is this is fine. This is okay.
Hmm.
And you'll probably, if you're familiar with these characters, for the most part, you'll probably find some enjoyment out of it. If you're not, you might definitely find some enjoyment out of it. I think you might find more enjoyment out of it from what we've talked about.
Hmm. Probably.
But don't
So,
expect anything amazing.
anything else to say?
A an a meh show from a meh company.
I'd say it's more than a meh, but I think more views would probably be shared once we actually know
A
what's going on
fine
with it.
a fine show from a meh company. That's as good as you're
Let's
getting
go.
from me. I'm sorry.
Let's go with that. Nah, let's go with that. So that's been all for this episode of the Outcast. We hope you enjoyed it. What are your thoughts about Captain Laserhawk and what it did with what it did? I
What
suppose
it
just like
did to Jade.
yeah, you can tell us all about it in
Ubisoft,
the
get
comment
help.
section. But Ubisoft release Beyond Good and Evil 2 and bring
No,
Rayman back.
don't
Thank
do
you.
that. Don't do that. Bring Raymond back,
Bring
but
Rayman back.
don't. Just forget about it. Just get help.
Anyway, you can tell us all about it in the comment section below on our Twitter, which is Berkcast with a capital B, capital C, and on our Tumblr, which is Berkcast Team. So until next time, I was HC.
I was Wolf.
And we will see you all in the next episode. Take care.
Bye bye.